we go. This is Zone Radio 88.5, and we are now going to speak to a gentleman who knows a thing or two about the waterworks, and his name is Patrick Conderan. And if all goes well, we should be hearing him. Hello, Patrick. How are you?
Richard, all good in yourself?
Well, thank you very, very much. Wet enough for you outside?
I beg your pardon?
I say, is it wet enough for you outside?
Absolutely. Lots of blocked stormwater drains.
Patrick owns a company called Patrick Conderan Plumbing, and we can speak to him about that because he made a very valid point once that I am going to expound upon. He takes care of maintenance construction. He is a geyser specialist. He also looks at that very thing he mentioned now, drainage and blockages. CCTV is sewer and line fault finding, also bathroom renovations. He offers pensioner discounts, and he's licensed, registered, insured, and fully accountable. Let's come to that accountability. You made a very interesting point once, and of course, Patrick is part of the False Bay Business Network. In fact, he's one of the early members, aren't you, Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. Going right back to basically the beginning of the network, and a very proud member of the False Bay Business Network.
One of the things that you mentioned once is that there's a reason why you have called yourself anything Patrick Conderan Plumbing. You haven't called yourself like this plumbing or that kind of plumbing or that name of plumbing. You have attached your name to your business. Tell people why you do that.
Well, I think it's important for the public to be able to identify with an individual as opposed to a name. You know, I could have called myself Drip Drop Plumbing, but who is Drip Drop Plumbing?
Yeah.
I've been in this valley most of my life, and I know a lot of people know me, and I like to think that they would identify with my values and my sort of way of doing things. So I wanted to personalize the business, and that's exactly what I did.
And it kind of keeps you on your toes in terms of accountability, because now your name is your brand.
Yeah, that's quite true, but I do want people to see us as being accountable. I mean, if nothing else, we are certainly accountable. We would never, ever run away from any little problem. And yeah, we stand by our clients, and it's as simple as that. We are fully accountable.
All right, tell people a little bit about the history of your business and how you came to be.
So basically, after school, 1988, when I matriculated, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do. And I ended up... first I did my national service in the Navy, which was huge fun. And then ended up backpacking overseas around Europe and all the rest, doing what a lot of us do at that age. And then came back to South Africa with a pocket full of pounds, and effectively just lay on the beach for the better part of a year until my good old father got hold of me and said, "Listen, son, you're not going to sit on the beach for the rest of your life. So, do something." And he steered me in the direction of the Department of Manpower, because, again, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And back in the day, the Department of Manpower used to do effectively aptitude testing on youngsters. And that's exactly what they did with us. And literally, they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "We'll give you a bursary to study plumbing if you like." And I was quite taken aback, but I thought, okay, let's give it a go. And so it was a year at technical college at Westlake, followed by a year's apprenticeship with False Bay Plumbing back in the day. They've since closed. And then an advert in the Echo, and we were open for business. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say we were open for business. I was open for business. Me on my own in my Nissan 1400 Bucky.
Nothing wrong with the Nissan 1400 Bucky. There's
absolutely no.
That's the studio here, and I will not get it.
That's exactly where that's where it all started. And then basically, I suppose word of mouth spreads, and one thing leads to another. And if you're doing good work, your phone's going to keep ringing. And I got busier and busier and busier. After about 6 months, I employed a labourer, and then the two of us were merrily sorting out the plumbing in the valley for about another year or so, until it got to the point that we, between the two of us, definitely couldn't handle the workload. And it basically just grew organically from that point. More phone calls, more clients, employ more staff, put more guys on the road, train up guys, and that's basically it. And people come and go. A lot of guys will approach us for apprenticeship positions, or these days they call it learnerships, and they'll stay with us for a year or two, maybe 3. Sadly, once they qualify, most of the guys are going overseas to places like Australia, and the UK and New Zealand and whatnot. But that's just the way it is at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of them also then end up going into competition with you as well.
Yeah, but then again, Richard, I don't really see it as competition as such. You know, if you want it, we could label it competition, but I think competition then is a good thing because there honestly is plenty of work around for a ethical contractor certainly in our area. When I say our area, I'm talking about the valley as well as the southern suburbs. We work as far up as Wynberg Observatory, every once in a while, even in the Cape Town CBD area. So we spread our net fairly far and wide, and yes, there is enough work for everybody if everybody just conducts themselves in a sort of an ethical kind of a manner.
And you generally find that if you are in a similar line of business, the ethical ones tend to work together with one another, and on non-ethical ones, they tend to try and duck and dive a little bit. But that's certainly how I've found it in business. All right, let's talk about some of the things that you do. I'm particularly interested in the CCTV sewer fault, line fault finding. What's that about?
Yeah, so it's not only sewer lines, it's wastewater lines as well, and also stormwater lines. Effectively, we get calls on a regular basis, and people will say, okay, I've got a blocked drain, can you give me a quote to fix it? And as we always point out, blockages by nature are intangibles. You can't tell what's happening under the ground. You don't know if it's a clump of concrete or a tree root from the neighbor's tree or what it is down there. So this is where the camera comes to the fore. It's a full color fiber optic camera. It's got a span of about 40 meters. And yeah, you're literally sticking a scope down the line, and it highlights exactly what the problem is. And armed with that information and that knowledge, you're in a fantastic position to now quote the client and give them a long-lasting solution to the problem. So it's a very valuable tool.
It sounds that way. It's interesting that you mentioned something there that I'm going to pick up on now, that a neighbor's route is blocking the line. What is this? How does that situation normally play out between the neighbors?
Well, usually they bicker and they squabble amongst each other to the point that they're no longer on speaking terms. We had a case in Glencairn last week, which was fairly similar, although those neighbours were a little bit more amicable. But it was a question of, well, whose problem is it? And effectively, if it's my tree in my garden that's growing underneath your wall and getting into your sewer system, it's my problem, not yours. Yeah. So oftentimes the affected party ends up calling us in, and we try and unblock their drains, and sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Then we bring out the camera, then we end up replacing sections of piping and all the rest. And of course, at the end of the day, it all mounts up to a fairly big sum. And at that point, obviously, the affected neighbour will present the bill to the offending party, and most times the offending party will pay. If they don't pay, well, then they've got to go and visit an attorney.
Yeah, I think that sometimes you're also going to get the situation where the offending party is saying, well, look, if it was my problem, why did you let me use my plumber? But that's another discussion.
Yeah, well, that's all down to decent communication between neighbours. I mean, talk.
Pensioner discounts. I like that about what you do. Tell people about that.
Right from the get-go, a large part of our client base was and still is the pensioner folks of our area. And we're extremely grateful for their custom. We're extremely grateful for their support over the years. And with the greatest of pleasure, we offer a 10% discount on all the labour costs. That also not only applies to pensioners, interestingly enough, it also applies to members of CMR. We offer them also a 10% labour discount.
I think that's very, very cool. Very cool indeed. Okay, let's talk about plumbing in general and what the person listening to us now needs to take into account when they sort of maintaining their homes. What are the things that we can look out for that if we attend to them quite quickly is going to save us a hell of a lot of money, and if we neglect is going to build up and build up and build up and eventually cost a whole heap of money? What are the little things we should be looking out for as homeowners? Yeah,
that's a fantastic question. Richard, the single most important thing for any property owner is to know where their water mains isolation valve is. In other words, the stopcock. if you have a burst pipe in your roof at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can call whichever plumber you want. All these chaps that advertise 24/7 service, you can battle to get hold of them. And in the meantime, your house is flooded. So you need to know where that water mains isolation valve is, and you need to test it to make yourself proficient in isolating your own water supply. Make yourself independent. If you don't know where the isolation valve is, we will greatly come out with pleasure, with absolute pleasure, and we will show you where your water mains isolation valve is. We will test it for you, and we will not charge you for it either. Again, it's a free service that we're very happy to offer. So I'd say, yeah, that's kind of the most important thing. What we do again for a lot of the elderly folks in the area, oftentimes you're dealing with a little old elderly lady, and her husband's passed away a number of years ago, and she's living on Comity Road, and she has no idea where her mains is. We show her where the mains is, and oftentimes it's half a meter underground, which is no good to her. So then we will reconfigure the piping, bring a brass isolation valve above ground, and then we'll stand there while she tests it herself. And again, then she's got that degree of independence. What else? If your drains are gurgling and bubbling and you're picking up foul odors and all the rest, it's not going to go away by itself. Typically, you need to call the plumber before you have a little bit of a nasty mess. If you find a little bit of a damp patch on a wall or on the ceiling, or you hear a dripping noise in the ceiling, again, if it's a sunny day and there's no rain, that problem's not going to go away by itself. So, pick up the phone and call your friendly plumber.
So those little indicators, it sounds obvious, it sounds logical what you're saying, but very often we tend to overlook those things, and then little problems become big problems. The other question I want to ask you about is underground leaks. Sometimes these are not as evident to somebody, and it can go on for months. Is there any way that one can routinely check whether or not all the pipes are in order? Let's say there's an annual sort of checkup on pipes. I had a situation in my home where there was an underground leak, and it went on literally for months, and it was that far underground that it never sort of bubbled up, and water was running away into the ground, and eventually a bill hits you from the municipality that is like an arm and a leg, and you just don't know. Is there any way of checking for those things beforehand?
Yeah, absolutely there is, Richard, and that's a very good point. We encourage folks to check their water meters. Check it once a week. The thing should be completely accessible and not overgrown with weeds and all sorts of sand and nonsense like that. Make sure your water meter is accessible, and then read it once a week. And if you see that little dial turning, even if it's turning so slowly, yet you're not running any water inside the house, you're not running a bath, or you haven't got the washing machine on or anything like that, if that little dial is turning, you definitely have a leak on your property, and you will need to obviously call a plumber. When it comes to leak detection, we find that I'd say about 80 to 90% of leaks are found by using common sense and drawing on your knowledge of the industry. Again, we've been at this for 25 years, so you kind of get a feel for these things. The 10% of leaks that we cannot find, we then refer to folks that do electronic leak analysis, and they will come along and they'll do either gas testing or acoustic testing. They've got various methods of actually pinpointing it. Of course, their rate is probably 3 times our labor rate. So we usually recommend, look, let us have a look at it first. And honestly, if we can't find your leak, we won't bill you for our time.
Okay. But it is important to do that. But the first point, the starting point, is make sure that because I don't know too many people who actually go out during the week or whoever go and check the water meter.
Richard, I know a lot of people who do that every single week, and you know why they do it is because they've got they've been hit with that huge water bill that you're talking about, and they've dealt with massive expenses. Once that's happened to you, you will check your water meter once a week, if not more. So no, personally, I know a lot of people who do, but you're quite right. Most people don't. It's a question of it's a change in mindset, I guess. On that note also of high water bills, what we tend to do if we fix a burst water mains pipe that's underground, or as we call it in the industry, unsighted, we then write a council rebate request letter, which we hand to our clients. So they get the invoice for the work, plus they get the rebate letter. And armed with the invoice and the rebate letter, they then approach council for a rebate on their water mains, and they will get a rebate. So, it's not all doom and gloom at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what happened to us, except that you had a credit there, and for the next like 4 years or something, you don't have to pay for water.
Yeah,
You have to
quite
fork
correct.
out the money before you can solve the problem, and some cash flow is a problem, but particularly now. So rather check the meter.
Exactly.
Talking about particularly now, the lockdown, did that affect you much as a business, Patrick?
I think it's affected us as it's affected many other businesses. Even now, you sort of feel the after effects of it. What I am quite proud of is that right from the offset, one of our prime objectives was to manage to retain all of our staff, and we've done exactly that. I have the same staff complement now that I had going into the COVID lockdown crisis. Obviously, there was a serious downturn in the workload. Construction, for example, ceased completely 100%.
Yeah.
And construction plumbing is a large part of our business. Thankfully, we've always done a mix of construction and maintenance plumbing and renovations and insurance work and body corporate work and solar and heat pumps and all that type of thing. So thanks to that mix, we've managed to keep relatively busy. And again, for that, we are very, very grateful.
You mentioned solar there. Do you do solar? I mean, would you be the person to contact if somebody wants to put in a solar geyser or something along those lines? Would you be the person?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%, Richard. We do a lot of solar. We also what a lot of people also don't realize is that you can convert a standard high pressure geyser to become a solar geyser.
Really?
You don't have to specifically go out and fork out, 10 grand for a solar specific geyser. These days, technology has moved on, and you can do conversions, and it's not that expensive. So yes, we do a lot of solar installations.
That's very interesting. I didn't realize that was possible, but it sounds feasible to me. It certainly does. All right. In the greater scheme of plumbing, if you were talking to a youngster looking for a career, somebody going forward, what would you say to somebody interested in plumbing, or would you push somebody in that direction? It's certainly a worthwhile career, and what would they need to know about that?
So what best advice I could give to youngsters, and I certainly do, on a regular basis, as I say, we take on learnership plumbers on a regular basis, is to align yourself with a reputable plumbing company, one that is fully licensed and fully registered, not just, Jack the half qualified plumber, because he's not going to be able to help you out. He's not going to be able to sign off on any of your work and guide you in the right direction. And that's basically it, and don't look for the soft option, because the soft option isn't going to teach you anything. You need to be prepared to roll up your sleeves and literally dig into the trenches and sort of at laborer level. Unfortunately, a lot of young chaps that cross our paths, they're not up for the hardships of that kind of work. They'd rather be surfing than standing there with a hammer and chisel beating through a wall. But yeah, you got a fuss bait, and you will certainly reap the rewards. I didn't know going into it, but it's turned out to be a fantastic industry, and I'm very proud to be associated with it. The other thing is we encourage people learners to approach the Institute of Plumbing South Africa and also the Plumbing Industry Registration Board, of which we are members, and get the learning process down right. Do it right from the beginning, and you'll come out all the better for it at the tail end.
I think it's a remarkable career. I really do, and I think there's a great deal of satisfaction being able to go into somebody's home or and deal with a problem that is definitely stressing them, and be able to calm them, fix it, make life a whole lot better for them, and put things back the way that they were. I had that problem in my home in Komiki. Upstairs cistern broke, wooden floors, the whole house was flooded. And the plumber came in and said, listen, we can make sure that we get all of this right and fix it all up. So I think that there's something quite special about being able to do that on a daily basis and make people feel a whole lot better.
Well, I think so. I think so. We often get told, I often get told, thanks very much for calming me down and talking me through the process because I had a flood. And again, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And then people say, well, I say to them, well, turn off your water mains. They say, well, where's the water mains? I say, it's right at the water meter. Where do you think my water meter is? I say, well, sure. Eventually we talk them through the process and they dig down and they eventually find their tap and they turn it off and now they're happy. When you initially get them on the phone, you can barely hear they're barely audible because they're panicking so much. So it's very rewarding to be able to add that kind of value to a person's life. Absolutely, no question.
I think it's quite remarkable. I'm looking at the FBN website, the False Business Network website. After waking up at 4:30 with our geyser burst and water running down our walls, our first thoughts were, how are we going to get this fixed today? This is Jeff Daniels, who apparently did contact you and you sorted out the problem. A great plumbing company that stays true to their promise. So you did that for Jeff Daniels. So
no, I will never ever forget that episode. It was quite a crisis.
Well, the thing about it is that sadly, you often only ever call in a crisis, unless, of course, it's construction work, which is something that's a crisis all on its own. But very often you are called in a crisis, and the fact that you are able to assist people in this way, I think, is quite remarkable. And certainly, you've built a great business around that reputation. Patrick, is there anything else that we've forgotten to mention that you would like to mention? I'm going to give contact numbers in a moment. So anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, again, to the public, if the public are looking for a plumbing contractor, again, you can approach the PIRB, the Plumbing Industry Registration Board, and you can get telephone numbers of registered plumbers, not your fly-by-night plumbers, but registered plumbers. And the important thing about being a member of the PIRB is that the PIRB is effectively the industry watchdog. And to remain a member, you need to keep up what's called CPD points, which is your continuous professional development points, much like your professionals do, your accountants, your doctors, people in the medical industry, whatever. They need to keep up their CPD points or else they cannot practice. And that's very important because having to do all these CPD points means you've got to do certain webinars and you've got to keep yourself really current with the industry and really know what you're doing, or you will lose your accreditation. So, when a person picks up the billboard and they're looking for a plumber, look for certain accreditations. Don't just go for the guy who's got the prettiest advert.
Yeah.
Think a little bit before you make the phone call because you will reap the rewards.
All right. Well, hopefully people are going to write this number down and keep that in the emergency notebook, because when the water's running flooding, it may be not time to go to a website and check for accreditation, and that office is probably not open at 4 o'clock in the morning. So
exactly.
Write this number down: 021-782-4411. That's the landline for Patrick Conderan Plumbing, and his cell phone is 083-310-0659. If you missed any of those numbers, give me a shout on our WhatsApp 072-447-8044, and I'll pass them on to you. Alternatively, just go along to www.fbn.co.za, and you will find Patrick's business listed on that website, along with his Facebook page, and also his. Do you have a website?
Yes, we do. www.pcplumbing.co.za.
There we go. And you'll find all that.
So all our services are listed on the website, obviously.
Okay. Patrick, thanks so much for your time this afternoon and for sharing your story with us. I certainly hope that people will make note of what we've said there. And again, we mentioned again, folks, that this is all part of the post-COVID small business kickstart that we at Zone Radio are trying to keep going. And we're interviewing these businesses and their business owners so that you in the Valley and even abroad online can hear what services are available and who the people are behind it. Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate the airtime. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome, my friend, and we in the community appreciate what you do. And may you go from strength to strength.
Much obliged. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.